Welcome to Eye on AA, a platform with the sole purpose of sharing information on alcoholism and recovery. If you're not familiar with AA traditions of personal anonymity, the policy is based on attraction, not promotion. That is why AA speakers and AA members are not photographed, videotaped, or identified by full name. The AA tradition of anonymity reminds us that AA principles come before personalities. All right, welcome to Eye on AA. Thanks for joining us tonight on a lovely Sunday evening. For those that are not aware, this is a new program being produced by the Into Action, which is a registered home group of Alcoholics Anonymous. Just to be clear, this show does not represent Alcoholics Anonymous and is completely autonomous under the direction of the Into Action Public Information Committee, which is dedicated to educating the general public on alcoholism. The opinions expressed on this show are solely based on each person's individual experience. And right now, tonight, we are here with the Into Action Home Group that is based out of Richmond, Virginia, where we're going to discuss some topics relevant to alcoholism and sobriety. As you can see by the slides, they do meet every Tuesday and Thursday from 7 to 8 p.m. They're located at 5400 Forest Hill Avenue and meet in the basement of Bethany Christian Church. You can also check them out on the web, aaintoactiongroup.com, or if you or anyone you know need assistance, we've got a phone number hotline, 804-651 3499, and that number will keep showing up as we go along here. You can also call into this show with some questions if there's something you want to know about, 804-250-5944, and that'll keep flashing up on the screen. Or if you like, you can pop something in the chat and ask us a question there.
651 is here.
All right.
651-34. That's it.
All right.
You guys carry.
All of us, yeah.
Well, we got some panelists here from the Into Action group, and I guess we could maybe sort of just kind of open it up and maybe discuss, like maybe number two wants to kind of give us sort of an outline of maybe what, maybe in your own words, what alcoholism is. So there's a lot of people out there that probably just don't even know if they're an alcoholic or not, and might be able to find out if they are from you.
Well, thanks for having us. And we are members of the Into Action Home Group, Alcoholics Anonymous. We're glad to be here. Part of our primary purpose is sort of reaching out. We're always looking for alcoholics to help. And probably the first thing that one would have to know is, alcoholism, as you know, is really not a medical word. It's a word we sort of the lay public we use. And we certainly use it in Alcoholics Anonymous. And our definition, although there's lots of them, but with the one that Alcoholics Anonymous uses, a person who, when they really want to stop drinking, find they cannot stop, or when they drink, they cannot control how much they take. So if you sort of look at that sort of a paradox, meaning if I could control my drinking but I had to drink, I'd be fine. Or if I could not control my drinking but I could stop, I would be fine. But for what we're dealing with in Alcoholics Anonymous, and what turned out, in fact, happened, what I became over time, was a person who could not control my drinking, how much I drank, and as well the inability to not drink at all. So it wrecked my life because of that issue, that situation. So that's when we think about alcoholism. That's what we kind of use. A guy or a woman that just cannot control it or stop it when they have a legitimate and sincere desire to do so.
All right, I think that's pretty good explanation there. Is there something, number one, that maybe separates alcoholics from other people? Like some people sort of just have that innate ability to stop drinking. There are some people that are like heavy drinkers. There's definitely a lot of places to go get alcohol. Is there something that was kind of in your own life where you kind of started to realize that you might have had an issue?
Yes, for me, I just knew when I started drinking, I just couldn't seem to stop when everybody else seemed to be able to stop. Say for instance, you have to go to work the next day. Most people would be able to cut off at a certain time. And I know for me, I would just continue to drink throughout, not, realizing that even though I had to go to work, I still would drink. And of course, I had consequences because of that, and, maybe couldn't even make it to work the next day because of my drinking. So that was for me.
All right. Number 3, would you say that, could you just take one drink? You think you could just take one drink?
Thank you for asking. Never could I take just one drink. I would fool myself sometimes and say, I can do this. I can stop. I can just go and have one. I remember being at business meetings sometime and people would say, let's go have a drink. And out of my mouth would come, I would love to have a drink. But a drink was never what happened to me. A drink would get me started. And I know today that a drink would put me back on the road to a place that I don't want to go to with the shame and guilt and humiliation that I experienced. I'd rather stay where I am today.
Yeah, I've often heard people say that, one drink is too many and 1,000 is not enough.
Yes.
So I think if you can identify with that statement, you might have an alcohol problem, and that's why this group's here. Again, this is the Into Action Home Group based out of Richmond, Virginia. They meet every Tuesday and Thursday at Bethany Christian Church. The number will be on the screen. If you need to reach out for help, call that 804-651-3499. Or if you just have a general question, call into our number on the show or pop us something up in the chat here. Let's see. I think a lot of what a lot of folks hear out there is, maybe a good question that probably everyone's been asked is, number 1, why didn't you just quit drinking? This is a tough one.
That's a good question, and I wish I knew the answer to that. But early on, I just didn't realize I had an illness, that I couldn't. It was something about when I put a drink in me, it makes me different from anyone else, a so-called normal person. I just can't stop. I mean, no matter what, no matter the situation, the consequences, nothing. I just continue to drink.
All right, well, let's see. All right, let's see if there's anything else here, sort of how to identify that you're an alcoholic. It's a question that some people out there probably, would be thinking about, isn't alcoholism just like any other addiction? And number 2, you want to feel that one?
Well, there again, addiction is a medical term. Not even a medical term anymore. I don't think DSM. We do cooperate with men of religion and medicine as well. In medicine, they use something called DSM-5, and they call alcoholism a disorder. And some incorrectly use the word disease, but medicine, correctly labels it as disorder. We call it an illness or a malady because it doesn't fall into the stuff that defines, in medical terms, a disease. And addiction is sort of a word that sort of is interwoven into those things. So in Alcoholics Anonymous, that word, that's not really a part of our vernacular. I really don't even have a full understanding of what the word addiction means in all truth. Assuming it means an aberrant behavior that I can't seem to stop, you could probably lump a lot of things into that. But where it might sort of have some relevance to alcoholism is with us, we're unable to stop drinking. And you could coin that a lot of things. We just coin it an illness or malady in Alcoholics Anonymous. Yeah, we really stay away from those words like that. It's really not part of our literature, part of our book, or anything like that. And there's a sort of a reason, I think, why they sort of I think early on they really realized that alcoholism was an all-consuming sort of thing, a malady. It's sort of touched every area of the sufferer's life, and it didn't follow any it didn't follow any sort of anatomical or physiologic pathway. It just sort of engulfed the sufferer like nothing anybody had ever seen. And so we sort of look at it as sort of a huge problem that's sort of all-encompassing. So yeah, the word addiction really isn't a part of Alcoholics Anonymous.
I guess if there were a magic pill out there to cure alcoholism, everybody'd take it, right?
God, we sure would. God knows, man.
I think there is a magic pill right here.
Yeah, there you go.
I found a magic pill.
Oh, that's a good segue on number 3. So I guess, in your own words, kind of describe to folks what AA is. I mean, AA represents Alcoholics Anonymous, but like kind of what does that mean to you when you came into this organization?
Oh, I was scared to death, first off, to enter the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous. And the reason for that fear is that I knew that I would have to address the malady, as my partner here mentioned. And I knew that it meant I would not be able to drink anymore. Wow. And you had asked the question earlier, when did you know you could not stop? I had no idea. I would try to stop all the time. There would be days it's like, oh, the next day, it's, I can't do this anymore. But I did. It had, the way I look at it is alcohol controlled me. I had no control over alcohol whatsoever. It had full control. So I'm very grateful that I'm here.
Okay, let's see. So I guess, when people come into AA, people also, they mention, kind of show up, go to meetings, but, there's sort of things that are outlined, go to an AA meeting, find a home group, find a sponsor, and work the steps. So I guess number 1, you want to kind of, what is a home group? I mean, what does that mean? I mean, don't people just go to meetings? I mean, I've seen it all on TV all the time. You always see somebody kind of running down the street towards the church trying to find a meeting, like that's, kind of like their last hope. So kind of tell us what, kind of what a meeting is in general, but like how does that relate to what a home group is?
Well, I know for me, when I first came to AA, I just started going to meetings, but the meetings, I didn't feel a connection just going to meetings. Being a very shy person, it was kind of hard for me to connect with people. And once I came to a group, which I eventually called my home group, I started to connect. It was a place also for me to feel more at home. People were friendly. I knew people by name. They knew my name. They knew my habits. They knew everything about me. And a home group it made me accountable. They knew if I didn't show up the next day for one of the meetings, they were like, maybe ask a question, where is this certain person?
Oh, well, all right. Looks like we got a caller here. Let's see if we can take this call. We've never done it before, so let's try it. All right. Hello, caller. You are on air with Eye on AA.
I have a friend who is interested in the program, but has a really big problem with the idea of God or any higher power. I wonder if you could help me understand what that's all about.
All right, that's a good question. So yeah, AA talks a lot. All right, well, we're going to hang up and then we'll answer your question for you. If you think of anything else, call us back. Thanks for calling in.
Awesome. Great. Thank you.
So you want to field that number 2? I guess there's often reference to AA being, is this a religious organization? Is this a cult? It often speaks of higher power. Like what does that mean in regards to work in this program?
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, it isn't religious, meaning that there's no distinction or identification with any religion by the fellowship as a whole or members in the group. We have we just sort of call it a higher power, meaning a sort of a spiritual term for something outside of ourselves that that we began to sort of connect with in a very spiritual way, which created changes in our lives that were meaningful. And it really is a very vague and thing like that. It really isn't it doesn't have a name. We call it a higher power. We loosely would refer to it as God, but we would really discourage anybody from really, I would say more accurately, would encourage a person to find sort of a God of their own understanding. And we sort of look for God in us instead of outside of us. And I think that's probably the biggest difference between maybe Alcoholics Anonymous and religion. Many of us are members of religion, and it doesn't mean that we don't also have religion, but those are two distinctly different things. And so our God is within us, if you will. We find this power that restores us to sanity.
So what you're saying is something that comes from sort of a spiritual guidance from within yourself and your own sort of relationship with a God or a higher power of your own understanding. It's not outlined by any sort of guidelines like you would have, like say the church, your God wants you to be this way, that way, or follow these rules. It's something that's more of an intimate understanding in your own personal spirituality.
I think that's fair to say. There aren't doctrines. It's a God without doctrines, I think would be a fair to say. And each person sort of discovers that, themselves.
Well, and to continue on this, to the caller's question, I would find it interesting to, if you really feel as though this friend of yours needs help, there's a lot of people who, I was extremely defiant before I came here. That defiance came out of me. And I was going to pick this apart to try to keep myself separate from this. And yes, AA meetings, Into Action Group meets in a church. You've seen it, our address there on Forest Hill Avenue. And we do meet in churches. Well, the churches have been so accommodating to recovery groups. They're also accommodating to Boy Scout groups, or to Girl Scout groups. So they want anything that helps people become a better person. And so if I had a friend who said, well, I am not going to that church, then that means they're not ready, or maybe they just need to come and observe. And kind of close myself off to any words that I hear. And like someone else mentioned, just feel the spirit within. Try to at least hear something that you can relate to. And that's what I had to do. People who spoke from the heart is what connected me in. And if they use the word God or higher power or the universe or the home group, then that's what helped me want to really connect in.
Cool. So since we're kind of talking about the home group and going to meetings, how does somebody join AA? Like, what do you have to do? Number one,
just have a desire to stop drinking.
Yeah, that's it.
That's it.
That's the only requirement. That sounds pretty simple.
Yep.
All right. Good answer. Some other questions that we had submitted in before, kind of back to the home group, but what is I guess we'll go to number 2. What is a 3 legacy home group for those that wanted to know what that meant?
Well, like number, what number are you? 1. Like number 1 alluded to, that we are all in the same home group and we're so very familiar with one another. But as number 1 alluded to, the requirement is a desire to stop drinking. But Alcoholics Anonymous is made up of functional groups called home groups. And I don't want to belabor or get into it deeply, but they had we have these sort of guidelines of how these groups will function inside of Alcoholics Anonymous, which with each group having its own autonomy to help alcoholics as it sees fit, governed by its own conscience, what's called a group conscience at its business meetings. So the groups are autonomous. They are self-supporting, as number 3 was alluding to. Not only do we meet in the church, but we pay the church a fair rent, meaning it's not a charitable rent, it's a fair rent. We've asked that the rent reflect the cost for us to be there, because one of our sort of principles we live by is we stand on our feet. We pay our rent. We're not walking around with our hands out so much anymore. And so we meet in those churches, and the legacies you alluded to are service, recovery, and unity. And what that sort of means is the group facilitates the process of carrying the message, because we just can't do it alone. I mean, couldn't make this TV show. This required a significant amount of planning at the home group level, and a significant amount of resources, organization, volunteers. A single individual would be very ineffective. Outside of a home group would be very ineffective because it's just too loosely associated. But a home group is a collection of accountable people to one another around a primary purpose of carrying the message. So they have the requirement to do this. So if I didn't show up tonight, I can guarantee number 3. I would show up at the meeting tomorrow night, and number 3 would spot me out like a bee. She'd come across the room and say, "Where were you?" And that's that accountability. It's so fun to be a part of a home group. That's how we grow and change. We change with each other. We can't change alone. So in recovery, we work the steps. Service, we carry the message. In unity, we have to do it in unison. We can't do any of this alone. I mean, if we didn't agree to be here at this particular hour, that the group that set this up and the individuals didn't take the time to set it up, if we didn't cooperate with one another in this effort, we would look ridiculous. And so being a member of AA really equates to being a member of a group. It's kind of like being in the NFL. You can't just be in the NFL. You're either a Dallas Cowboy or not America's team. And just kidding. I'm a Cowboys fan. But or being a platoon in the military, or a member of any profession. You work in a hospital. Which one? If you were a physician, you'd practice in a hospital. Where do you practice? So AA is really functionally described as a collective of groups that create a fellowship, and that's like the NFL is a collection of football players on teams that create a league.
Okay, gotcha. So yeah, number 3. So since kind of based on what number 2 was saying, what was I going to ask? Lost my train of thought.
Well, we could go back to home groups. I had some thoughts on that.
Yeah. I mean, if there's something you want to share, we've got about, probably about 8 minutes left here.
What?
No, we don't.
A brief show.
I was thinking 8. We're going to 8:30. Yeah, if you want to go ahead and share something, then I can collect myself and maybe come back with a question.
That would be a great idea.
It sounds like I need some support from a home group.
Obviously, you can see we do have a good time here. That's part of that unity. We really get to know each other. But, when we were sharing about home groups, I was thinking about my own personal experience and what came before the home group came, and it all happened very quickly and spontaneously. But I was told to find a sponsor and to get a home group and to find a group that I would connect with. But who directed me in that was the sponsor. And, a lot of times people will ask, well, how do you find a sponsor? Well, the person who I selected to be my sponsor is, I watched her, I listened to what she was saying, and I believed everything she said. She was a little more spiritual than what I thought was real at the time, but I was fascinated by it. I was fascinated by her ability to connect in with a higher power and to believe and to trust. I had no trust. And so when I asked her to be my sponsor, she said yes. And she said, you have to do a few things. Are you willing to do a few things? And I said yes out loud, but in the inside of me, there was hesitancy. But what she said about a home group, she says, I want you to get a home group. A group, for the 3 legacies, the service, unity, and recovery. She said, but what you have to do is get outside of yourself. You need to do this quick, and you need to select a group. And I traveled when I was first sober, where you're in town. You're guaranteed to be in town, pretty much, 95% of the time on that night. And you are committed to that group, and you do not miss that meeting. And, contestant number 1 shared the same thing, or whatever we're called. Anyway, so to me, that sponsor directed me in finding a home group and gave me good, solid advice. And I didn't join her home group. I wish I would have. But we did try to go to meetings together in the beginning. So, anyway, what was that? Number 2?
I said, so do we.
What?
You said I just messed.
Don't go to the same.
No, you said.
He's always ad-libbing.
We are having way too much fun on this TV show.
At least we're having fun, yes.
There is obviously no script here, right?
That's the truth. What was my question again? No, just. Okay.
Cool. Well, that was a good segue into sponsorship. Like, people are always being told to get a sponsor, so it's like, you kind of elaborate on that some. So it's like, number 1, like, okay, well, I'm looking for a sponsor. How do I go about that? What am I looking for in a sponsor? Or how do I get a sponsor? Does someone assign that to me, like in class, right?
Well, for me, I got to choose my sponsor, and you want someone whose life is working for them. I actually knew my sponsor when he drank. So once I saw him again, and he found the rooms 7 years before I did, and I saw how his life had changed. I saw he was just a totally different person. I didn't even, matter of fact, I didn't even recognize him when I saw him again, because I hadn't seen him for like 7 years. And it was just this look, I don't even know how to describe it, but it was something I knew I wanted. I wanted to be like. I mean, he just was, I don't know how to
seemed to have it together, right?
Yeah, he had it together.
No problems.
His life was just working. I mean, he and I wanted mine because my life had become so unmanageable at the time, and I needed as much help as I could. And I heard that a sponsor would lead you and guide you, and that's what my sponsor has done for me.
Fantastic. I mean, it looks like it's working. You're here, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So we did get a question here in the chat. Someone that doesn't know anything about AA, and they're looking for some help. And they're kind of asking, what is the reason for hiding the faces? Is this the Witness Protection Program, home group for AA? Number 2, you kind of want to tell us, about anonymity and and why it's called Alcoholics Anonymous. It is called Alcoholics Anonymous, so that's kind of what's happening here is we're sort of maintaining an anonymous program. Do you want to kind of explain a little more about that?
Absolutely. I mean, you got 50% of the name is right. You can tell in the name who it's for, and a certain principle we abide by, which is this anonymity thing. And the reason we do that, now at the level in our own home groups, we know we introduce ourselves with our first and last name, and our founders sort of described that. There was a fellow named Bob Smith who was instrumental in the development of this. And he was very clear that we're not hiding from one another in the group. And he went on the record saying, if you're anonymous in your group, then you've gone too far with your anonymity. But in the level of the press or the radio or TV or something like that, our concern would be that although the Alcoholics Anonymous program works for everybody, some of us we're imperfect people. We wouldn't want the general public to be associating any one of us as a spokesperson for the program as a whole, because people may not like our politics as an individual, they may not like our opinions, we may be active in other areas, we may be in many different arenas we may be known, and so that's something we don't really want them to judge the program by its messenger. So when it comes to the level of this, you know, we wouldn't want somebody to it isn't self-protective. I'm not here to protect myself, but we wouldn't want people to judge the program by my own imperfections. So I could speak about the program, wouldn't want to identify so much with me. The second half of that equation is I wouldn't want to start taking credit on a public level for having acquired sobriety. I wouldn't want to become heady. I wouldn't start thinking highly of myself. And if I were to drink again, I wouldn't want people to think Alcoholics Anonymous didn't work. So through our history, we sort of realized that we had to be anonymous at the level of press, radio, and film. We had many people break anonymity, and our founders strongly discouraged that. And because people may not like that person, and it may bring a lack of credit. And so we just decided to leave our personalities aside, let the program shine, and just be anonymous members at the level of press, radio, film, but not in the group. If you came to the group, we have names.
Yeah, everybody knows each other.
Yeah, of course. As Bob
We
said.
don't wear masks.
No, right. Well, sometimes we do wear masks.
Yeah, well,
we abide by laws.
but-
If it's but not like we're not.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
They're not some secret
clandestine.
society.
No,
Yeah, we don't have curtains
Thank
coming
you,
down
yeah,
over
right,
us.
Well, I would say that there's definitely probably been, a fair amount of, famous or celebrity folks out there who, kind of made their sobriety known, but then fell off the train, which, sort of leads me to another question that someone submitted here, and this is, why doesn't AA seem to work for some people?
Ooh.
Number 3, you want to
Wow,
take a shot at
tough
that?
question.
That is a tough question.
Yeah?
Very tough question. And if somebody said to me, it just doesn't seem to work for me, I would say, well, come back and try again. Because we have so many people who have tried and tried and tried, and now they have 20, 30 years of recovery. So I personally am related to someone who tried and tried and tried to get sober. AA was not working for them, and now they have 6 years sober. So why it works for some and why it works for others, I don't know. I can't answer for someone else. I can only answer from my own experience. And for me, I feel as though I had reached a level within myself of destruction, of, filled with such shame and guilt and just a feeling of, I really didn't want to be on this earth as I was any longer. Not that I was suicidal, but I just didn't want to be around anymore. It just wasn't worth it. And so for me, AA has worked because it's the only, when I was within myself trying to stop this and, trying all kinds of measures, it didn't work. So if it's not working for someone, I would say come back and try again and come to our Into Action group and just listen on a Tuesday night or hear one of the speakers on a Thursday night and then watch how the home group members will envelop you and try to raise you up to a level that perhaps this will work for that person. Okay. And my other counterparts here, anything? Your experience?
Well, it sounds like, for some people that it's, like you were kind of alluding to, that they may not be ready for the program to work for them. I don't know.
I hope they don't die.
Let's see. So we talked about sponsorship. Let's see. Does anybody kind of, number one, you want to talk about the 12 steps? A lot of people out there probably just don't even, and our person said earlier, very well explained on anonymity. So thank you, number 2. I had to catch up on the chat. But do you want to kind of outline what the steps are? I'm sure, people see on TV what you go to work the steps, go to a meeting, but what does that actually mean? Like, what are the steps about?
Wow. I guess the 12 steps are, it just helps us have this new way of living. You get to find out about yourself. You get to find out, wow, that's a great question. and we worked the 12 steps. I mean, it changes our life. It changed my life. I know that. Because I didn't know, for instance, like the first, that my life had become so unmanageable. That was one of the steps. I didn't know I had to make amends, to people. I didn't know I had to go out and carry the message again, and all those things are some of the steps, we have to do and to continue working on ourselves. And, it also helped me to take a look at myself. I didn't know, I always thought I was an okay person. I didn't realize I had issues. I didn't know I had character defects. I didn't realize, I needed to work on myself. And once we, and you work the steps with a sponsor. And once I did, I started to find out some new information, and it helped me on and with life. And it helps me today, even, as I continue to use steps in my everyday life.
Yeah, some points I heard in there were a design for living. So it sounds like, there's a sort of discovery process within that, those 12 steps that you kind of learn about yourself and learn a new way of living. Because I think, probably for a lot of folks out there that, that might have a drinking problem, things aren't working out so well. Right. So let's see. Let's see, okay, so I'll just go on to number 2 since we're kind of talking about the steps. And it's like, how did you realize, like, was there a moment when you realized you stopped drinking, or did you have to kind of fight to stop drinking, or like, how did that go down? Like, did you just wake up one day and that was it?
Well, as number 1 alluded to, the steps force us to sort of, they're really fundamental, sort of principles or tools that, we didn't invent them in Alcoholics Anonymous. Their origins were, they were common threads in most religions and most, even in psychology to a large degree. So it was sort of an amalgamation of those sorts of things. And some folks put them together and divided them into 12. They really originated as 6 from a sort of fundamental Christian movement that existed, back in the early 20th century. And so there's really nothing that original about them, but it's really just taking a very close and critical look at ourselves and looking at ourselves through a lens that others might look at us through, a more objective lens, and beginning to see possibly a tool to see ourselves as others would see us, as we see ourselves in a greater reality than we had before, and then the connection to that higher power as a source that could change the nature or trajectory of what we saw in that, to sort of alter our course. And when we did that, when we sort of engaged that process, many of us had the obsession to drink was lifted, and I think among us, pretty much, I don't think any of us here, or the obsession to drink is completely gone, and most it is that way. It happens that goes away. That's probably the first thing that goes away. But the process of living through these principles, or trying to live this way of life, if you will, this design for living, is a lifelong process. So as we engage that, the obsession to drink seems to stay away. But strangely enough, for those of us who are alcoholics in the sense we described earlier, if we sort of step out of that and sort of go back to our old, more ways of thinking that were conventional to us, the obsession to drink often returns, and many of us do go back to drinking, and others just become very troubled. And so we're folks that have had many of our troubles have been removed. We don't struggle with things as we used to.
That was another question that someone had submitted. Can an alcoholic ever drink normally again?
No.
No. Is that a unanimous?
No.
Yes.
It's unanimous answer in the group.
Well, number 3, since you alluded to, what's the difference between a heavy drinker and an alcoholic? I mean, we've seen heavy drinkers; those are different animals.
Well, there are, and we have a lot of literature that I was referred to early on in recovery and value it completely. So a heavy drinker could actually have something in their life happen. And maybe early on in drinking, no, I never had that personal experience, so I can't share from that. But I know that a heavy drinker has been known to stop drinking. If, they're going to lose their career, their business is going to fall out from under them, and something tragic has happened. And there are people who have been able to stop drinking. And then a real alcoholic, I absolutely could not drink. I had to drink. I would tell myself I'm going to stop. Things got really, well, when it did start getting to the point where I felt as though I was going to lose everything, things were right on the verge, that's when my innermost self was saying, you need help. And when I woke up that one morning and those magic 3 words came out of, I need help, is when I just know today that was my higher power guiding and directing me. But to me, that's the difference between the two, is there are heavy drinkers, say college age or, whenever you really get into drinking, and they're able to stop if there's a huge personal or business reason to do so. And an alcoholic would not be able to stop because of that. And I think we've talked a lot about our experiences in that regard here today.
Let's see. I think someone else also asked, what was it that, if you have to go, do you have to go to AA meetings for the rest of your life? Number one.
It's a treasure.
I know for me, I do. I most definitely do. Because if I ever, and I have early on, when I first tried to get sober, I thought maybe I could go to a couple of meetings and stuff and I'd be so cured, as someone might say. But obviously I found out that it didn't work. I found that I needed to do this every day of my life. I mean, for me, in order to have a fruitful life, I needed to keep coming, keep getting the message, keep getting these new ways of living, ideas for living. And for me, I know I have to go every day.
Yeah, I've kind of heard people talk about, Bill and the guys that sort of outline this whole program that, they weren't always perfect, right? They had issues along the way, and I think, if number 2 wants to elaborate on some more, what did they find that worked for them? Like, what was it about this program that kept it going for them in their own lives in order to maintain their own sobriety?
Well, it's funny, so historically you were alluding to this, Bill, you hear this, so there were people that sort of established Alcoholics Anonymous, and there was a guy named Bill Wilson, another fellow named Bob Smith, who was a proctologist, or colorectal surgeon or something, and the other guy was a stockbroker. But they were both members of a religious group called the Oxford Group, and one of them they started getting this idea that they could practice these very fundamental principles in life, but if you connected that with helping another alcoholic, they themselves could stay sober. And so that laid the groundwork and the underlying sort of function of the fellowship as a whole. And so that's really what it distilled down to, was the act of working with alcoholics on top of this spiritual or principled way of living, when put together and folded into a home group, so you have the machinery to do it, produced the thing that we see today called Sobriety and Alcoholics Anonymous. So those are sort of again, it really is just recovery, service, and unity, once again stated in Alcoholics Anonymous.
All right. So number 3, what do you have to pay to join AA? Are there fees?
Well, I paid a pretty low price with the loss of dignity and self-respect. So I had a pretty high price, I guess, that I paid. And what's really incredible is the only price I pay today from a financial standpoint is just my contribution to help, as number 2 referred to earlier, pay for the coffee and the literature and the church that we meet in. And if I go to meetings outside of my home group, I also, put money into the basket to support their group. So there was a high price of my own dignity and self-respect that I paid in order to be able to join this beautiful fellowship and to continue on a daily basis. But when you arrive, the only thing that it costs is just a little bit of humility. Not humility in a bad way, but humbling myself in the beginning so that I could, as someone said to me early on, take the cotton out of your ears and put it in your mouth, so that I could listen to the message of other people who had so beautifully been able to not drink 24 hours at a time. It was just, I couldn't believe it. I remember there was a man at my very first meeting, he picked up a 15-year chip, and I went, he's lying. There is no way someone didn't drink for 15 years. I mean, it's just, I just couldn't fathom life without alcohol. And what this has given me is just a whole new life without alcohol and with knowing myself better, and to be able to live life on life's terms today, and to, experience, those things in life that continue to happen in sobriety, but I'm able to work with this, with the fellowship of the men and women in my home group and Alcoholics Anonymous.
Interesting. So that there wasn't like a bill, like say like a treatment center. There's not like a bill at the end of the night that's passed out to you or sent to your home address that you have to pay in order to get this new design for living. You're essentially saying that this is free.
This is free. Essentially saying, yes, this is free.
Oh, cool. I think folks can dig that. I would certainly hope so. Let's see. We got a question coming in here. Let's see. What is, and I guess if y'all all kind of want to do it, I mean, what is the difference between being dry and sobriety? I guess what they're asking is, I guess there's folks out there that would just not drink and maybe be fine. I don't know. So not drinking versus being sober.
Well, not drinking is sober. I mean, in the strict sense of the word, that's what it means. But alcoholics, we drank because we just had these sort of unsolvable problems that sort of made life very unbearable without drinking. And strangely enough, and it's hard to imagine that, but as it said in our book, the same person who seemed so overwhelmed by life, who's solving these problems, was never going to happen, is suddenly able to find himself able to cope with life, fit in very nicely, and have his problems removed, be restored to sanity, restored to our rightful places in society, be made whole again, return to our professions, our families, our homes. I mean, books as many came out of asylums to assume their place in society. Many a family has been put on a path that really goes somewhere. And those are all very real experiences that happened in my life because of this program. And so if just not drinking in the old life would be a very unbearable thing, but being able to experience life as any other human would has been very meaningful in Alcoholics Anonymous to me. That's I think that's certainly very important in Alcoholics Anonymous. In fact, our steps talk about drinking only one time in the first step. The rest of it is about being restored to a meaningful, sane, enjoyable, valuable way of living, and that actually, strangely enough, works. That we look and act like normal folks, indistinguishable in many ways, which is a miracle, I mean.
Might be questionable, but it's a miracle.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, man. I couldn't stay married. I had all kinds of big personal problems. The drinking was just the icing on the cake. You name it. I had many personal problems before I got here that just seemed unsolvable.
Yeah, there were a bunch of questions people submitted that were kind of like, will AA help me financially? And you did. There was another one here. Will AA help me straighten out my family troubles? So it sounds like it will. Will it help you out financially? Number one.
For me, it did. Because my every waking moment was trying to figure out where I was going to get that next drink, and I spent hours trying to find ways to get it, and also I couldn't keep a job when I was out there drinking. So quite naturally, if you don't have a job, it's kind of hard to keep finances going. And so, that's what happened for me.
Number three, will it cure my anxiety, my depression?
Ooh.
This is probably a tough one.
That takes you back to the steps, and at least for me it would, or does. Because if I do have a situation in my life that's causing anxiety, angst within my heart, or anxiety in my body, then I can go to a step. I can call my sponsor and I can work a step, meaning I can inventory what is really going on here. Go back and think, I have a situation where I had an argument with a member of my family and I blew. It's like I just blew up. I had to take a 10-minute, I said, I need 10 minutes. Went into another room and I had to look back. Now, the steps taught me to do this. Here I am, an adult woman, but Alcoholics Anonymous taught me how to look within and say, where did this come from? Where did that rage come from? And I went, okay, so this had happened, and then I went back, and 5 minutes before that, something else had happened. I won't go into details, but I went back about 5 incidences that had happened within an hour in that day. And I went, that's it. And it went back to an old resentment I had. Didn't have anything to do with the person I had the rage with, but it was an old resentment. And I had never made an amends for that resentment. And that was powerful to me. That gave me the power to be able to go to the current person, say, whoa, here's where that came from. And, so this program has given me the opportunity to look within and get over those rageful thoughts or those resentments. And, but it takes work. And it also helps me recognize when something's happening. Or I can recognize in someone else things that are inside of me. And I'll go, oh, maybe this makes me angry when this person acts that way. And I'm going, I do the same thing to other people. So, I had somebody in the program say, here's one I'll share with the audience. They said, if you spot it, you got it. And I was like, oh, I hate that, but it's so true. So the steps have really helped me walk through any depressions or anxiety that I've had in my life.
They're kind of saying that it opened your eyes to sort of how you were behind the scenes of your own thinking in a way.
Oh my gosh, yes.
That's amazing.
Well said.
Let's see, we got about 5 minutes left. I guess we kind of want to address, maybe, people out there still kind of on the fence of whether or not they think they're an alcoholic or not. And, one of the questions here, I'd never walked alone into an AA meeting for the first time, and all they thought about an AA meeting was a bunch of old dudes smoking, hanging out in the dark corner, or people that were found in ditches, kind of thrown in, in a room. But it's I'm here, everyone can't see everyone here, but I feel like within this small group we have a diverse set of people. It's not that were you all found in ditches? It's do you have to fall into a ditch to realize you're an alcoholic? Maybe a metaphorical ditch for some people, but not everyone always is completely destitute. Then they may still have an alcohol problem. So I'll just, kind of just go around the room, and if you just kind of want to just throw out your own experience and kind of just brief about how you experienced AA and, what it's done for you, and then we'll just close it out after that. We'll start with number one. Number one.
Oh, wow. I know for me, I had a problem, with life. I couldn't function. I constantly drank, and, it's for anyone. Anybody can do this. I used to think you had to be the smartest person in the world to be in this. I thought you had to be financially set. I didn't know. I didn't realize that anyone, this could help anyone, no matter what, smart or whatever. And I didn't even think it could help me because I had tried early on in life, to get sober. And this program of Alcoholics Anonymous has just really helped me. It has helped me tremendously in life.
Yeah. Number two.
I would just echo what number one said. That when you're drinking is when you want to stop for whatever the reason. It could be an employer, it could be a family member, wife. Somebody is strongly opposed to your drinking, or you, and that desire to stop is what you're seeking. Then you're ready to come to Alcoholics Anonymous. That's it. You don't have to lose everything. Some lost a lot, some lost a little, and so it's really very individual, circumstantial.
Agree. Absolutely. And it doesn't matter what age you are. I've seen people really young come into the program. I had a home group member who was 15 and she's still sober, and she was a miracle. And I was a lot older than her, and we came in around the same time. What I know for sure is I have a lot of not yets. That's what my sponsor told me early on. It's like, I'm not sleeping under the bridge yet. I don't have a DUI yet. I always said the cops must have been on Hull Street when I was on Midlothian, or vice versa. I didn't lose a marriage yet. There were a lot of not yets that I had. I really didn't lose a job as the result of my drinking, but I was in a profession where my boss didn't even live where I lived, so it was going to be pretty hard to get caught. So I have a lot of not yets, but I'm very grateful that I'm here because my life has changed so much, and I know myself so much better. And I would just welcome anyone to come to Into Action on Tuesday or Thursday night and meet with any of us. And if you don't want to come by yourself, I heard earlier somebody had written that they, had never been by themselves, then call that number that's on the screen, and one of us will meet you at a coffee shop or wherever.
Right.
And we'll meet you at 6, and we can all go to the meeting together at 7. So feel free to do that. I'm so grateful for recovery.
All right, sounds like a plan. Well, thank you all for being here. Thanks for all the questions that people put out there. Again, this has been a wonderful experience, and I think that the takeaway in general is that if you think you might have a drinking problem, or you might have a drinking problem, or someone's told you might have a drinking problem, there's a place for you in AA. And there are people here that are willing to help. So you can either come to the meeting. The Into Action group meets every Tuesday and Thursday, like the number on the screen there, 5400 Forest Hill Avenue. Every Tuesday and Thursday night, there are always people there waiting to help you. So if you're having an issue, go get some help. Thanks for joining us, and tune in, subscribe to the channel. We'll probably be back here next month with another show.
Thanks for watching Eye on AA live show with the Into Action Home Group of Richmond, Virginia. Please join us next time for more on alcoholism and recovery.